Welcome to this week's edition of Indigo Living. Well, I want to say on the couch series, but with 2020 and a little social distancing, we've upgraded our set to a fancy new table. But we still have incredible guests that join us each week. Whether they're small business owners, big business owners, philanthropists, women in the community that are making a difference, they have joined us each week to share their story. And I truly hope they inspire you as they inspire me. Now, as it's the end of 2020, I'd like to say one of the most memorable years ever. This month, the producers and I have decided to celebrate authors, women that have created and achieved something so special and have documented into a book. So today, we're welcoming Neha. She has created and designed the most incredible, inspiring book of the year. It's called Girl Power, and it celebrates 50 incredible women from India. Please welcome Neha. Welcome, Neha. I'm so happy you're here.
It's such a pleasure.
So it is December, and when we were talking with the producers, we really wanted this month to be special. It is the end of 2020.
Finally.
Finally, yes. I don't think I've ever emphasized that word so much. Yes, it is the end of 2020, and we wanted to celebrate female entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and women that have created books, whether they're coffee table books or inspirational books like yours. We wanted to celebrate them, and hopefully if you guys are doing any Christmas shopping, you're gonna click to the basket and this will go into your wish list, because these books are truly inspirational.
Thank you.
But I want to start out with your journey, because I love sharing people's stories of how they got to where they've got. And you have such an incredible story, because I feel like you've always given back. Charity and philanthropy has always been instilled in your family values, and even in your career.
It has, and for me, it's been, well, let me start with a story. Let me start with a story and take you back. I was actually working for the UN for a long time, and I was working with UNICEF. And what we were trying to do was provide access to quality education for India's children, right? A lofty goal, and it was. It was a wonderful time. I learned a lot, but I think there comes a time, and this happens to so many people who are working in these large multilateral agencies, where you feel like you're working with policies and paper, but you're not really working with people. And I decided that I wanted to focus on that. And it so happened that around the time that I was doing this, I was living and working in Delhi, and Delhi was building the Delhi Metro. And they had gotten in migrant labor from all over the country, good folk who were engaged in building this big infrastructure project. But these folks had nowhere to put their children in school. So what I decided to do was go to my alma mater. They weren't using the classrooms in the evening, so I said, give them over to me and I'll teach these children. And it began, and what began as sort of a small project really became one of the formative experiences of my life. Because I felt like my day job complemented my night job, so to speak. What I was doing in policy then began to have its impact on the people I was working with, and vice versa. And right around then, I remember I came across this line by Desmond Tutu, and he said something to the tune of, there comes a point in our lives when we have to stop pulling people out of the river, and we have to look upstream to find out why they were falling in the river in the first place.
I love that.
It was fantastic, and I thought about it. And it was that work downstream, which is pulling people out of the river, which is your volunteer work or your activist work, balanced with the going upstream to find out why it's happening in the first place, which is your policy work. And when you find a balance between those two things, I think you can make a real difference. And I've tried to stay true to the upstream and the downstream in everything I've done since.
I love that. And I think when you really see that impact of helping people, doesn't matter how small or big it is, I think the word progress is the biggest thing, right? It's like if you can just take even baby steps to reach your goal.
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't have to be leaps and bounds.
No, it doesn't. And it's about, and for us, I think as women, and we can talk more about this, but I feel like as women, we are all invested in this shared experience of womanhood, and with all its joys and all its struggles. And I think as women, we tend to find impact in small and big things. It doesn't have to be that oh, I've had to impact 100 million lives. It could be something small that you start at home. It could be you could start a kitchen cabinet of your own and make real sort of progress that way. I completely agree with that. I think it's a misnomer to always try and focus on the numbers. Progress happens very often at home. And it doesn't matter how small it is.
Let's talk about your educational background, because I know the majority of your life is or was in India. I know you're now Dubai based, but you studied in the US.
Yeah.
How did that change the perspective? Did you learn anything about how women were treated differently, or did it just kind of open your eyes being in that sphere in a US education?
You know, for me, well, it did. I think the short and long answer is that it did and it didn't. It opened my eyes in the sense that, of course, you're going from, when you move from India to anywhere to the West or the US, there's a different way of doing things. You come across aspects of critical thinking, which you'd never really thought about before. So of course there's all of that, but I think what I've come to understand, traveling the world a little bit, working and learning in different places across the world, is that actually we have more in common than we realize. Mm-hmm. Especially as women, I think we have more in common than we realize. There's a concept in Islam called ummah. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept, but from my understanding of it, it denotes the idea of a shared identity, which means that it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter your language or your nationhood. The idea is that we share in this common identity, and I think womanhood is something a little bit like that, where we have this shared understanding of what it takes to be a woman, which is why, and you see evidence of this everywhere, which is why when Kamala Harris gets elected to the vice president post in the United States, women all over the world, people who have never even been to the United States, will celebrate.
Of course.
Right? Because at some level, we've been there.
Yes.
At some level, we understand what that struggle must have been like.
Yeah.
And at the same note, you and I could be, scrolling through our Instagram feeds, and you may come across the account of a woman who, I don't know, perhaps is struggling with body image issues or finding that balance between work and home. And even though you don't know her, you've never met this, it's a nameless, faceless account, somewhere as a woman, it'll make you stop and maybe even wince a little bit because you understand.
I think women truly have empathy in them, right? There is that sense of understanding. And you're right, wherever you are in the world, women are juggling the same things. It doesn't matter which corner of the world they're in, whether it's family, blended families, jobs, multitasking, working, and still putting a smile on your face and still looking and feeling the best you can. And I love that example you gave of the vice president-elect. I think she did make so many women across, whether you believe or what party you're in, there was that sense of celebration.
And for people who clearly don't know her, who aren't, I mean, we're not Americans, we never voted, but there was a sense of jubilation and celebration and joy because you understand that the path to getting there was paved with struggle and difficulty, and I think for me, I'm a great believer in that. I'm a great believer in sort of a rising tide lifting us all, sort of thing. And I think as women, if we begin to see each other less as competition, but more as collaborators, as co-conspirators, I think we will be able to participate, like I said, in that rising tide that will then lift us all.
Well, I truly hope this show is a platform for that, because we've been doing this for a few seasons, and I will say we have an incredible team at Indigo Living, not only here but in Hong Kong as well, and they watch our show. And we wanted to give a platform for women, whether they're small business owners, big business owners, philanthropists, leaders in their community, to share their story, their journey. And I truly believe that when every episode that comes out, that one person's watching and they're like, oh, that's how you do it, or I've been through that, or how do I make it a reality? Because people just need to be inspired. And
Absolutely.
I'm so glad, actually, it's December. I'm glad it's the end of 2020. And this month is really about celebration. So you said it yourself. The word celebration is coming every week and every episode we have. Thankfully.
I think we all need a little bit of that in 2020, don't we?
We do. Now let's talk about girl power. First of all, I want to know, when was that moment, that tipping point where you were like, I want to write a book?
Yeah, well, that tipping point has been there for as long as I can remember. I think it's, we all have that one dream. And I think that's been mine for a long time. The I have to write a book has been there for a long time. But I have to write this book came to me when I have 2 children. And my daughter was 8 when she started learning and researching about these incredible, captivating, marvelous women, as she would call them. Mommy, they're marvelous women from all over the world. And she found some incredible stories. So I remember there was a Japanese skateboarder who was inspiring her, and an activist in the Congo. She was very taken by Greta Thunberg, of course. And it was wonderful. And then she came to me and she said, Mom, why aren't there more Indian women who have broken the rules, as she put it, as she very aptly put it? And I can tell you, Rosemin, in that moment, and that made it to the title. That
is actually the title. I love
exactly. That made it to the title.
I should have had your daughter on the show. I'm going to interview your daughter about this. So she came up with it.
So she came up with why aren't there more Indian women that we're hearing about? And I can tell you that in that moment, I think I was startled and I was terrified. Startled because I realized she was right and we weren't coming across so many Indian stories, and terrified that one of my children was growing up without realizing and understanding all the phenomenal women that had come before her to really bring her to where she was today. So I took it upon myself, and what started happening was I would research a story during the day, and at bedtime I would tell her that story. Now, obviously, she would ask me questions to which I didn't have the answer. So back I was the next day researching the answers to those questions. And in that very organic way, we actually discovered some incredible stories. So there was the story of Arunima Sinha, the first female amputee to climb Mount Everest. She did it with one leg amputated and a steel rod in the other. Wow. We discovered the story of this incredible female-led team of scientists that got the Indian rover to Mars, and it was absolutely marvelous. So all of this to say, never underestimate the power of a startled and terrified mother, because she will come up with a solution. So I had to come up with girl power, because I realized that these stories needed to go beyond just my daughter. And I wanted to get it to as many little girls as I possibly could. Well,
you're a mom of a little girl and a little boy, yes. And I think even boys need to know that there are incredible role models out there as well. This is an incredible book. You've been to so many book fairs around the world. You have spoken at so many book fairs and literary festivals. You are an acclaimed columnist. How hard was it to even just edit this book? There are so many incredible stories you had.
It was a little bit like walking into this store. It's a little bit like walking into Indigo Living, and I'll tell you why. Because you walk in and everything is so captivating and you sort of want all of it. So when I was researching this book and I was coming across these stories, I wanted to include them all.
Yeah.
Because they were actually incredible stories, and they had all the elements that stories should have. Suspense and drama and the theatrics, they were incredible. But of course, I could only include 50. So I tried to sort of include, little girls have varied dreams. For every little girl who wants to be an astronaut, you'll have someone who wants to be an activist. Or for anyone who wants to be a scientist, you'll have someone who wants to be a sportswoman or a singer. And I wanted to have that breadth of accomplishments in this book. So that's one of the metrics that I use to sort of select who's going to be part of this volume was, well, let's try and include
various different sectors and industries, which I was really impressed about as well.
Exactly. And then India's geography. India's geographically very diverse. And I wanted to have some of that diversity also reflected in this book, which I think it's come out nicely.
So I love the color. It is, of course, a superpower.
Yes, that's exactly what it's
bright, it's exciting. But the illustrations are so lovely as well. What was that process with finding an illustrator to make these stories come alive?
Yeah, it was a collaborative, wonderful process, and the way it would work is I would do the research, I would write it up, and I would send it to our illustrator, who is very camera shy, by the way. But I would send it to her, and she has this lovely studio in Pune, and she would sketch them out, and she's used several different mediums to bring these to life. You've got some watercolor, you've got some charcoal, you've got, I think her talents have been absolutely well on display here, and she's done a wonderful job to bring these women to life in the pages of this book.
This book is not only inspiring little girls, it's really helping Indian women, put them on the map and sharing their story.
Absolutely, and I think that was one of the reasons that I wanted to write about this book, is because a lot of these stories, especially some of the historical stories, I felt like had been relegated to some dusty page of an old history book that was never going to come to light. So the endeavor really was to come together and celebrate these stories. For me, when I was writing this book, the image I had in my mind always was of a great big bonfire. Or of a great big fireplace, if you will, where all of us as women sort of come together and share our stories, and we talk about the wars and the wounds, but also the victories that we've had. And we sing these stories, we tell these stories, and we come together to really celebrate that. So this is my contribution to what I think of as that great big fireplace that we can all hopefully sit at. As women, and enjoy each other and enjoy each other's stories.
Well, I think everyone needs a copy of this book. Doesn't matter where you come from around the world, because they are truly inspiring stories, and they're real lessons and success stories of, well, as it says here, 50 awesome women. I wasn't going to use that word, but that they truly are. They really are inspiring stories. You're working on the next book. Can you give us a little heads up of what that's about, a little sneak peek?
Well, here's the thing. I feel like 2020, as we celebrate its end, 2020 has really been a year of reckoning for all of us. We've all had to reckon with all sorts of different things. And one of the things that's happened, and it doesn't matter, again, where in the world you are, but one of the things that's happened is we've all had to develop almost a new relationship with technology. Right? Yeah. We're learning to work online. The children are going to school online. They're connecting with their grandparents on FaceTime. We're talking to our friends on WhatsApp, and through all of this, I feel like technology has seeped into our lives in a way that it's becoming difficult to sort of to differentiate. But what's also happened is our generation as parents, we're the first generation that's having to talk to our children about using tech. No generations has had to have this conversation before. And because of that, because we're the first generation doing it, there are no ancient maps, if you will, right? There's no guidebooks. Yeah. There's no conventional wisdom to rely upon. We've all just had to. We've got to figure it out.
Yeah, we got to figure it out.
We got to figure it out. So this new book is a book that asks some of those questions about how do we have a functional relationship with tech? How do our children have a functional relationship with tech, such that it's done in a way that adds value and is balanced, but it's not insidious, especially with what's happening with social media, teenage depression, and all the rest
social media is. I mean, I hope you're going to have a chapter at least on that book, because I feel like now kids are learning things that they shouldn't be learning. They're learning it so quickly
and very early.
The attention span is so quick. They don't even want to sit in a room for more than 10 minutes. They're so used to strolling.
And it's happening to all of us.
Yeah.
I was reading a piece of research by an MIT professor, and he said it very well. He said, what's happening is, because we're so used to the pings and the notifications and the constant interruption and being being on Facebook, but also on WhatsApp and replying to an email and checking the news all at the same time.
Yeah.
Our brains are getting rewired such that we're getting very good at multitasking.
Yeah.
Great. But we're also, as he put it, just staying in the shallows.
Yeah.
We're not able to do
anything in depth. 100%. I need to read that
And-
article from MIT. Send that over. No, I completely agree with that. It's, the way everyone is communicating is so different. And to really also just have these relationships that have depth in them rather than these surface relationships, because everyone is just WhatsApping, there's no conversation. And now with this year, we've had minimal contact with people as well. And I think it's affected all generations, whether it's seniors, middle age, and even younger children. It's actually affected how everyone has communicated.
Absolutely. And I think what you were alluding to was real intimacy with others, which is something we need to think about, and also intimacy with ourselves.
Yeah.
Because what's happening is, when you grow up on social media, as a lot of young people are nowadays, you tend to measure your self-esteem by the number of likes you get on a post. And that's a very difficult way to live. Look, I think the teenage years are hard enough no matter what.
Yeah.
But when you begin to add on these pressures to a young mind that isn't even fully developed yet, I think there's a reckoning. So that's what this research is focused on. The next piece of research is focused on in the next book, which will be released in 2021. So I'm very excited about it.
Well, I'm so excited. We have something to look forward to next year. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
So happy to have you. This is her book. It's called Girl Power. It is available on Amazon. Make sure you add to basket, because it is definitely a book that I think everyone, whether you're a girl or a boy, should be reading. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Rosemin. What a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us in our last month of 2020. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, of course, Instagram, and send in your comments, follow, do all of that. And of course, visit us here at Indigo Living. Thanks for joining us, everyone.